Padres trade talks are intensifying. MLB insiders have linked the Friars to the Atlanta Braves for some catching help. Sean Murphy, the latest name to come up in discussions in the Major League Baseball insiders circle as a potential trade target for the Padres. Let's talk about everything that means in the short term and the long term for the Friars. What's going on, everybody? Christian Pedersen back with another episode of Padres Digest. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is the part of the show where I beg you, please hit the subscribe button. It's so easy. If not, no worries. I will always be here to rant about baseball, whether or not you hit it. Let's talk about said baseball. Sean Murphy is the latest name. He is a catcher for the Atlanta Braves. He is a potential trade target, according to multiple sources. Let's set the table here. For those of you that maybe do not live and breathe and die by all the numbers, here's where the Padres are at headed into the All-Star break. 5.5 back of the Los Angeles Dodgers and very much in the conversation for the NL wild card if you are already resigned to saying that the Dodgers just aren't going to get caught. That being said, the Padres are at a spot where I still think that this team, if you get them into a gotta win 3 out of 5, 4 out of 7 type of thing, is, I'm not going to necessarily say lethal, like guaranteed dubs, but I think that this team, with that Phillies series specifically, showed us that the pieces are starting to click and that the bullpen is there and that if the pitching can get help, like, I know that's a couple ifs, but they've showed us the framework for a potential deep playoff run. Of that framework, catching definitely needs an upgrade, and I'll say that DH/left field would like an upgrade, but catching needing an upgrade for at least the offensive end has linked the Padres to a couple of different targets around the major leagues, and one of them, like we're going to talk about here, is Sean Murphy. If you want to hear about the others, like I said, hit the subscribe. You can check out all the videos. Sean Murphy, let's talk about it. Drop a comment as we go on all of this. The numbers for him are maybe not necessarily like outrageous. Oh my gosh, he's ripping the cover off the ball. But here's where we're at. 231, 16 home runs, 38 RBIs. This is better than anything the Padres have tenfold. The 16 home runs, granted, if we acquire him, they would not transfer over to say he's going to hit 16 more, but the 16 home runs to me indicate that there is some pop there, so that if the Padres, if the Padres still only get a 230 hitter out of this, 230 with, if he can hit 8 to 10 home runs in the second half, I'll take, you let me know what you think, but I'll take 230 with 10 home runs in the second half as a 10 out of 10. I would absolutely take that addition to the Padres and say that, all right, we're set. Let's batten down the hatches and start going. That being said, of the catching pieces that the Padres, and then maybe of all the trade pieces that we are linked to, Sean Murphy is interesting because he is the furthest one from being a rental. We're talking about a rental that is a guy who is on an expiring or maybe 1 year left kind of deal. Here's where Murphy is at. In the middle of a $70+ million contract, making $15 a year. He is 30. Gonna turn 31, so it's not like we are getting a guy who's at the tail end of a contract. This would be an interesting one because as opposed to a rental, this would be the Padres making an investment in their future at catching for a couple of years. And maybe if you really want to think like galaxy-brained big league move here, I could be talked into, let's make a bigger, splashier trade for Sean Murphy here, because him coming in for the next couple of years to help, obviously, with the here and now and be an upgrade for the Padres to have a better shot at a deep playoff run this year, but for him to come in for a couple of years buys the right amount of time to either figure out Ethan Salas as a legitimate, he is the future of San Diego catching, or takes a little bit off of pressure off of figuring out Ethan Salas, allows him to then be a minor league trade option that is less no-touchy and more of a interesting prospect to dangle out there. Because if Murphy's going to be here for 2 or 3 years of team control into his early mid-30s, like maybe he's the next guy until the next guy. And maybe where there might never be a permanent solution at catcher. It seems to be a position that we precariously do that dance of Do we want an offensive guy? Do we want a guy that works well with the pitching staff? Is there any perfect balance of the two? Maybe there's a battery. Okay, great. We're never going to have the perfect solution, but if there is a deal to be had here with the Braves, they are not in contention this season. They're 10+ back of the NL East, and hope springs eternal and all that. But you got to go on a blisteringly hot run in that second half, and I don't think the Braves have that. That being said, I also think the Braves have a lot of pieces and can talk themselves into, we don't need to sell. We're going to bounce back next year. So how do the Padres get this done? Let me know in the comment section what you think maybe the threshold is for a Sean Murphy. I don't want to get rid of LDV. Leo Arraez, our 19-year-old top international prospect, shortstop, minor league phenom. Obviously, Ethan Salas would be a weird trade to get a catcher, forgive a catcher thing, but maybe if you can talk me into that, I'm down. So more than likely, it would be us trading some of our pitching pieces. Can't dish Cease to a team that's like Cease is a rental, can't dish him in this scenario. So you got to get a little bit more creative and say, like, are we going to trade some of our top minor league pitching prospects, maybe international cash? I don't know. I don't know, given that I'm not AJ Preller and I can't see inside the minds of our front office to know exactly what they're thinking. But I do know that this is an interesting option to me. Power is interesting. Power is at a premium at the catching spot. $15 million a year it's an expensive deal, but a deal for if we get this year, but then we get 20+ home runs and 250 or 260 for the next 2 or 3 years, I think that I've actually got a pretty high tolerance for what we part with in exchange for this. Maybe we don't even have the pieces to part with in exchange for this, but I think that again, this opens up the window for like a multi-team deal where maybe we're taking some salary off their books. So-and-so else needs a reliever. We got in Preller, I trust. The draft went really well. You can check out our video on that. We've got guys getting healthy, so the team is building up momentum into the second half, and I really want to focus on all of these reports and rumors and stuff going on with the catching position specifically. Left fielders, Duran, great. Whatever we get there, sure. But the catching one to me is a really interesting one because it is truly a negative spot right now in the offense. And we're begging and pleading. And shout out to my boy Curtis for always believing in Martin Maldonado. But, dog, I got to break it to you. You've sent me 3 texts about Martin Maldonado being good at offense this year. And that is not, that's not a sustainable option for a team that wants to make a deep playoff run. If you're happy with just making the playoffs this year, then no deal. Let's not trade for anything. Let's hold on to all the pieces we have. But I kind of like, if the Padres are in it right now the way that they are, being selectively aggressive. And I think there's some deals to be made where we can dish Cease for some, so maybe it's like a cascading thing. We dish Cease for a piece, acquire some minors, send them over there. Who knows? I don't think you guys do, but that's the fun part of all of this, is we get to be in this experience together. So you can drop a comment below. We can talk about it exhaustively until AJ Preller finally gives us something concrete. But for now, reports are intensifying about the Padres aggressively going after multiple targets in the trade deadline, and one of them is Sean Murphy. Like I said, let me know what you think in the comment section. If you could hit the subscribe, it would be much appreciated. Until next time, keep the faith, Padres fans. We'll talk to you soon.